Hello everybody and welcome back to Piggy What If, where we go through many alternate timelines and find out what happens if we change one small aspect of the Piggy story. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe, and of course let me know any of your what if scenarios down below. Let's get right into it. What if Pony never left T.S.P? As we all know, T.S.P was the main antagonist for the first half of Piggy Book 2. Headed by Willow, they were a dark and grueling bunch of soldiers who stopped at nothing to get what they wanted. But behind the charade of a fearsome group of survivors was actually a pretty toxic environment headed by Willow Wolf herself. Willow was fueled by rage and a desire to crush and take revenge on the player for taking her parents away when she was a child. And it resulted in affecting a lot of the members of T.S.P, specifically Tigray, who, as we can see in the cutscenes, gets verbally abused by Willow and put down constantly. Willow is a massive bully towards the members of T.S.P. And this is possibly one of the reasons that Pony left, because of the toxic environment. But what if he didn't leave? What if he stayed behind? Well, I think that would give us a darker and more aggressive version of Pony. Let's rewind the clock all the way back to Book 1, Chapter 8, Carnival, where we were supposed to meet Zizzy and Pony. Well, now we only meet Zizzy, as Zizzy has probably never even heard of Pony before. This makes a lot of the resulting chapters a lot harder, as both Pony and Zizzy acted as a duo to take out Infected. Well, take away half and you've only left with half the power. In fact, we may even get overwhelmed in the plan chapter when Pony and Zizzy themselves are meant to be fending off the Infected. Well, now that only Zizzy is there, she may not be able to hold out. But let's say she does. Let's say Zizzy is a one-man army in her own right, and we actually get through to Book 2. We go through Book 2, Chapter 1. We go through Book 2, Chapter 2 store, and then we decide to go and meet the members of T.S.P. Well, just a strange voice on the radio. We don't know any better at that point. And there, amongst the group, as they surround us, the player and Zizzy, Gerald, Mimi, we see Pony, who's dressed in obvious T.S.P. apparel, a grey and black clothes, looking very much like an edgy Roblox Slender that you'd see in the streets. Of course, since Pony has never met Zizzy or the player before, he has absolutely no feelings for us at all, so he happily obliges as he takes Zizzy into custody and brings them back towards the refinery. I'd say he was Willow Wolf's second in command before Tigray had to come in once Pony left. By the way, Willow talks to him. And that would put him in charge of the refinery, which is exactly where we need to break into to rescue Zizzy all by ourselves. In fact, it's even possible that he would be the bot for that chapter, constantly pursuing the player in order to bonk them with his wooden sword, or who knows, maybe an upgraded sword, like an actual katana. And for this chapter as well, the player would actually need the help of either Gerald or Mimi to help with the vents and climbing through and the toy car and everything, stuff that Pony would have done in the original universe that he won't do now because he's the one hunting us. Eventually we get to the end of the chapter, and as usual, Zizzy gets infected and she hugs us, the player, telling us to leave as she'll make a distraction for the refinery. Pony, obviously failing in his task, is extremely upset, but he needs to escape. He needs to escape the refinery as well before a crazy infected Zizzy goes on a rampage. And so we escape the refinery, unfortunately without Zizzy, and Pony gets away back to where I assume is the factory where the T.S.P base is. Fortunately, it gets better from there though, because as before, Willow shows up at the safe place, Pony by her side. Pony could be using the rocket launcher or something to take the safe place members to jail, and of course they do end up taking them to jail, but the players escape. They break out and they begin saving people, including Pony, who was stuck in the sewers near the whiteboard with the Mr. Stitchy eye behind him. He gets saved from the factory along with the other T.S.P members, and Willow actually accepts to join the safe place, and along with her comes Pony and the rest of T.S.P, and once again they are reunited with the player. However, Pony slowly becomes more isolated as he has no true friends in T.S.P. He doesn't have Zizzy or anyone, and slowly the strange voice from an unknown figure beckons him towards the insolence. And so that's what if Pony never left T.S.P. Now, I think the big important thing about this side story is that Pony is a lot more exposed to the insolence, to the actual Mr. Stitchy Eye, as the bases of T.S.P. are the ones containing the insolence, so he'd be a lot more influenced by it. Like, we've seen him influenced already in the safe place, which will likely be coming up much later on, but this would be a whole nother level. In fact, he may even turn into one of those shadow figures before we even break out of the factory, which would be an absolutely terrible terrifying thought, but it also leads me on to another thought and another what-if story for us to dive into. What if Mr. Stitchy showed up sooner? We all know Mr. Stitchy is most likely the big bad guy of the entire Piggy story. However, we had no mention of him until book 2, or at least the Halloween event, where he was first summoned in the forest, and ever since then, the stories slowly become darker and darker and more insane and insane as Mr. Stitchy's influence slowly grows and creeps up on our characters. But what would happen if that influence showed up much sooner? All the way back in book 1, in fact. Well, for all we know, he did show up, affecting Mr. P. This isn't just another what-if alternate universe. This is an actual theory that also could occur within the Piggy story. Didn't you think it's strange how Mr. P slowly became more insane and more insane until he started killing us, yet showed no signs of infection that we'd heard of before? All we knew before was that they slowly lose control of their body, but they still have their mind. Well, with Mr. P, it seemed to be the opposite. He had full control of his body, but he slowly lost his mind. And I believe it could be to do with Mr. Stitchy. Now, let's rewind all the way back to the start of book 1. Let's just say in chapter 1, just like with the Halloween event, we see Mr. Stitchy in the house. In fact, below the house is the ominous humming of the Mr. Stitchy eye. He appears again in Piggy Chapter 2 Station. In fact, Doggy himself is hearing some strange thoughts in his head. The warning signs of the insolence slowly grow greater and greater throughout each chapter, just like with Chapter 5 The School in the sewer. If they looked hard enough, one could catch a peek of Mr. Stitchy along with an entire army of what seems like dark, shadowy figures behind him, all the way until we get to Chapter 8 The Carnival, which is where I think Minitoon in this alternate universe would introduce the insolence and give us a big look at what it is, and it would be the reason why Foxy is locked up in the carnival. As we enter the map, the lights would be a lot darker than usual, and when we get to Foxy's cage, all we'd see is a cell covered entirely in darkness, save for a slight muttering that comes from within. And from then on, as the chapters continue, we'd see more and more of these monsters along the way. In fact, a few of them would be like the bot NPCs that chase us around the map. In fact, who knows, a few of us may end up cursed ourselves. Now, I can't really go any further with this because I don't know the backstory behind Mr. Stitchy. It's something that we're going to learn in future, and I'll revisit a few of these once we do learn of Mr. Stitchy's true nature, but I feel like it would be a much darker story in Piggy if Mr. Stitchy began showing up sooner, because he'd have a lot more time to do a lot more things and get in a lot more of our characters' minds, and that would be quite terrifying, honestly. Oh boy, that was a dark and spooky one, wasn't it? Oh, Mr. Stitchy, woo, very scary, bad. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, if I saw Mr. Stitchy under my bed or just staring at me from a certain distance, I would lose my mind as well. It's a good thing I often wear brown pants when I'm going outside. Now, that one was a bit of a darker timeline, but I think I found a really good what-if question from my comments in my last video by Braden2121. What if everyone survived? And that's actually a really interesting question. Well, while we know what would happen if everyone survived, there'd be no piggy infection at all, so that wouldn't matter. Maybe I'll do a what-if story on that. I'd like to ask, what if every main character survived? Firstly, the rule for this story is as follows. Everyone that we would consider a main character didn't get infected. That includes Doggy, Bunny, Georgie, the Safe Place members, the T.S.P members, Zizzy, they all survive. However, the characters that I don't count as main characters are the ones that are only mentioned in the story, either through notes or through the actual story itself. That includes Penny, Grandma Piggy, and Badgie as well. And then of course you got Mr. P, who's a bit of a special case since he wasn't necessarily infected, he just went crazy. Let's just dial it back a bit. Let's still say that it's pretty much impossible for him to make a cure, so we don't go down the Mr. P wasn't crazy storyline that we did last video. Let's just say he's there traveling with the group. Well, it's already a much brighter story for us. As we continue our way through book 1, we meet Doggy. He drives us from the station to the forest. Doggy survives the forest. He continues with us to the school. We meet up with Bunny and Mr. P through the hospital. Now, with increased numbers, Mr. P doesn't actually lose hope here. And so while we try to get in the chopper actually won't fit enough people. So Mr. P says, okay, let's go to the carnival and then we can go on from there. I've got a great safe area there. We'll be safe. And so they travel through the metro all the way to the carnival. carnival, and there they meet Zizzy and Pony, and the entire group is starting to grow as a family now once they're introduced to the safe place. Once they see Georgie and Mr. P, they get to meet each other and they get to have a talk and they become friends again. All the way up until we get to the meeting with Willow after the radio segment, who, just like in the last episode of What If, where we talked about what if Doggy survived, well, he certainly survives in this story, and in that story, Willow saw both him and us and was twice as angry, because remember, Willow hates both Doggy and ourselves. We were both involved in her arrest, so she is twice as furious seeing both Doggy and ourselves, and her eyes light up with fire and fury. However, this time, she's unable to take any prisoners, as the entire group of Bunny, Doggy, Mr. P, Gerald, Mimi, Zizzy, Pony, and ourselves engage in a huge battle with T.S.P and all their members. The fight is fearsome, and the numbers are pretty even, but the residents of the safe place have much more skill overall, provided by Bunny, Doggy, Zizzy, the weapons of Mr. P, and the player themselves. And the safe place members absolutely mop the floor with T.S.P. In some timelines, the entirety of T.S.P is wiped out, while the residents of the safe place return to their homes to spend the winter, completely unaware of Budgie's boat. However, in another timeline, some of the T.S.P members are left alive and captured, including Willow, who eventually calms down and learns to work with the others, and maybe even becoming friends with them and making up with Pony, the player, Doggy, and everyone, eventually telling them about the boat, and they all set out for the North Sea. And there you go, that's what would happen if every main character survived. Well, technically in that story, in one of the timelines, Willow technically does die in a little fight with the other main characters, but we can sort of like brush that to the side. We can just say, in the other one, she got captured and she tells them about the boat to the North Sea. What a happy ending, and still the entire gang is there. I wish that was the one we got to go through, but we're probably in a little medium one. Anyway, let me know what you think about this, everybody. What do you prefer? Because I kind of changed it up a bit here by removing my face cam while I was telling the story. Did you prefer that, or do you want my face cam back so I'm making these actions when I'm talking? Let me know down below, and also let me know if you want to do more, and let me know any what if scenarios that you want. I actually go through and I look at them when I'm making these, and I look for some of the really interesting ones, which is how I found what if every main character survived. So again, let me know down below. I'll catch you in tomorrow's video. Goodbye!